Roman 2 is the batch cost and unit cost using activity-based costing. That is ABC system. ABC system is where we assume that we have what we refer to as cost drivers. Cost drivers are those activities that cause cost to be incurred in an organization. And in an organization, there are activities that can be, there are costs that are incurred and they are caused by activities that are similar, which are normally grouped together into cost drivers, and the costs associated to those activities together are normally called cost pools. And so when we have such activities causing those costs to be incurred, we normally connect them to the cost drivers and the cost pools. And we have been given under additional information note number 1 that the production, the total production overheads for the month of June 2021 has been analyzed as follows. So machine-related cost is a cost driver, and the cost volume is 14,600. Material handling and dispatch is a cost driver, and the cost volume is 6,800. We've been given up to engineering support, and then we have the volumes given, which is, we have batch A, B, C, D, that's in note number 2, and there are totals that are given. So when we are using activity-based costing, we will not calculate the absorption rate, but instead we will calculate what we are referring to as cost driver rates. And how do we calculate cost driver rates? Cost driver rates, rates equals production, I can use it equals an overhead cost, that is production overhead cost or a budgeted overhead cost, and we divide this by the cost volume. That's what will give us the cost driver rate. In calculating of the absorption rate, it is budgeted overhead cost over budgeted activity level. For cost driver rate, it is that overhead cost, but we divide it by the cost driver volume. All this has been given. So how do we calculate this? You are to identify the cost driver, and once you've identify the cost driver, we also identify the volume, and then we simply divide to get the cost driver rate. One of the cost drivers is machine hours. Machine hours. Remember, I've said that a cost driver is an activity that is causing a cost to be incurred. So how will we calculate the cost driver for machine hours? It is the overhead. In part number 1, machine-related cost was 14,600. So you take 14,600 and then you divide this by the cost driver volume, which is given, and you use the total, not per batch as given. So already you've been given the total for machine hours per batch. The total was 1710. 17. So I divide that, 14,600 divided by 1710. This is 85 shillings per machine hour. Per machine hour. That's one. Another cost driver is material movement. Material movement. The material handling and dispatch was equal to 6,800, and we divide it by the cost volume, which is 495. This will give us 13 shillings point, this is 13.3, this is 13.7, this is per material movement, per material movement. The next one is requisitions. Requisitions, and this equals requisitions is related to stores. So we have 8,250, and the cost volume is 130. This will give us 63.46 per requisition. Then we have inspections. The overhead cost is 5,850, and the volume is 47. So when you calculate, you'll get 124.5 shillings per inspection. The next is setups, which will equal to, the overhead is 6,200. Divide this by the volume, which is 43. This will be, you'll get 144.2. This is per setup. Then we have engineering. Engineering hours. Engineering hours, the overhead is 8,300. We divide this by the volume, which is 190, and this will give 43.7 shillings per, that is engineering hour. So that is the first step that you need to do. After calculating the cost driver rates, we now move on to calculating the total cost for the batches. We now continue. So we have batch A, B, C, and D, and the values will be in shillings. So we are computing the total cost of the batches, and it's done in the same way as in our first part, beginning with the direct materials. For batch A, the amount is 1,650. For B is 750. C 2,100, and D 900. Then direct labor for A is 9,200, for B is 1,520, C is 6,880, and D is 2,400. So we get the sum of this, which is called prime cost. So for additions, for batch 2 we'll have 10,850. For B we'll have 2,270. For C we'll have 8,980. And for D, we'll have 3,300. From there, we calculate the production overheads. Production overheads. Can call this working number 1. Production overheads. In this case, the production overheads will be based on cost driver rates and the cost drivers and cost driver rates. So to calculate production overheads, this will be equal to cost driver rate multiply by the cost driver volume. Cost driver rate multiplied by cost driver volume. So beginning with the machine hours, the production cost based on machine hours will be equal to the cost driver for machine hours was 85 shillings per machine hour. Under note number 2, you are told that the following cost driver volumes were recorded for the 4 batches, for batch A, batch B, batch C, and batch D. So based on machine hours, the production cost will be calculated as follows. Beginning with batch A, machine hours for batch A. It will be equal to batch A, the machine hours per batch for batch A was 520, and the cost driver, I had started with cost driver rate, so I begin with the cost driver rate. So the cost driver rate for machine hours as we calculated was 85 shillings per machine hour, multiplied by the number of machine hours that were given. So the machine hours for batch A were 520, which we are referring to as the cost driver volume. When you calculate this, you'll be able to get 85 times 520. You'll get 44,200, and this will be the amount for as production cost for batch A. And you do the same for batch B, batch C, and batch D. So coming to our working space, production overhead cost for batch A will be equal to 44,200. Then for batch B, the number of hours, machine hours given were 255. So we take 255, we multiply by the cost driver rate for machines, which is still 85 shillings. And this will give us 21,675. Then the machine hours for C is 610 times 85 will give us 51,850. And then for D, the machine hours are 325. You multiply by 85, which will give us 27,625. That's based on machine hours. Sorry. So this should be production overhead. I can underline this. And then under this we have machine hours, based on machine hours. So the value should be under this and not here. 21,675, 51,850, 27,625. So that should be a production overhead, but based on machine hours. And then we move on to material movements. Material movements. For material movements, the cost driver rate was 13.7 shillings. We multiply. So this is for batch again A. For batch A was 13.7, and the material movement for batch A given is 180. So we simply multiply that, and when you calculate, you will get 2,466. So under material movements, batch A, the value is 2,466. We do the same for B. The rate is still the same. That is 13.7. You multiply by the movements for B, which is 70. This will give 959. Then for C, the movements were 205 multiplied by 13.7, which will give us 2,809. And then for D, the material movements were 40. So 13.7 times 40. This will give us 548. From there, we move on to requisitions. So the cost driver rate for requisitions is 63.46. And the requisitions for batch A were 40. So we are taking 63.46, multiplying it by 40 movements. And this will give us 2,538. So requisitions for batch A is 2,538. I can show how we've arrived at that. Requisitions for batch A will be equal to the cost driver for requisitions was 63.46 multiplied by the number of requisitions for batch A, which was 40, And then when you calculate that, you'll be able to get 2,538. Then you do the same for batch B. The movements were 21. So 63.46 times 21, I'll be able to get 1,332. Rounding it off, 333. Then for C, can write 12, 1,333. Then for C, the requisitions were 26, 63.46. When you multiply, you'll get 1,650. Then for D, the requisitions were 130. This will give us 8,250. I can use this other side. Then our next cost driver is inspections. So we are to calculate the production cost based on inspections. Inspections for batch A will be calculated as follows. So we have cost driver rate multiplied by cost driver volume. So the cost driver rate for inspections had already been calculated, which is 124.5. So this will be equal to 124. That is 124 and 50 cents, and we multiply that by the cost driver volume, that is from note number 2 under inspections. For batch A is 18, and you simply multiply that by 18. So when you calculate that, you will get 2,241. So this is what you bring here, and we'll have 2,241. Then you do the same for batch B. The cost driver rate is still 124.5, but the inspection for batch B was 8. So 124.5 times 8 will now give us 996. And then for C, the inspection is 13. So 124.5 times 13 will give us 1,619. And then for D, the inspections are 47. 124.5 multiplied by multiplied by, inspections are 8, not 14, by 8. And this will give us 996. That was based on inspections. Then we move on to setups. We are to calculate the production cost based on setups. So setups for batch A will be calculated using the cost driver rate. So the cost driver rate had already been calculated, which is 144.2. So we are taking the cost driver rate times the cost driver volume from note number 2. So under setups for batch A, we have 12. So we take 144.2 and we multiply that by 12, which will give us, this will be 1,730. So this value, you bring it under batch A, which is 1,730. 30. Then do the same for B. So the setup cost driver remains the same, which is 144.2 times the setup for batch B is 7, and this will give us 1009. Then for C is 144.2 multiplied by 16, which will be 2307. Then the last one is for B. Setup for B was 144 multiplied by 0.2 multiplied by 7, which gave us 1009. Then for C should be 16, 144.2 times 16, 3007. Then for D is 144.2 multiplied by 8, which will give us 1154. 1154. Then the last one is engineering. Engineering hours. We calculate the production cost based on engineering hours for batch A. This will be equal to cost driver. The cost driver rate is 43.7. So we are taking 43.7 multiplied by. Under note 2, engineering hours for batch A is 65. So multiply that by 65, and that will give us 2,841. So you bring that value under batch A, which is 2,841, and then you do the same for batch B, C, and D. So for B, we'll have 43.7 multiplied by 38, which will give us 1,661. Then for C, it is 43.7 multiplied by 52. And this will give us 2,272. The last one will be 43.7 multiplied by 35, which will give us 1,530. So we now get the total cost. And for us to get the total cost, we are adding prime cost plus production overheads. So beginning with the machine hours, the cost driver, machine hours, to calculate the cost driver rates, we had 14,600 divided by 1710. So this should have given us 8.5 and not 85. You can just make corrections. Should be 8.5. And that means our working number 1 should also be corrected. Under machine hours, this should be 8.5 and not 85. So when you take 8.5 multiplied by 520, you will be able to get 4420. So remove 1 0, it should just be 4,420. So 4,420 and not 44,200 as we had written earlier. And then 8.5, that's for batch B. The machine hours that were given under note number 2 was 255. So when you take 8.5 times 255, you'll get 2,167.5. So put a point in between 7 and 5, not 75. So it is 2,167.5. And then for batch C, we are to take 8.5 multiplied by 610, which will give us 5,185. For you remove a 0, should be 5,185. And the last one is batch D, which is 325, 8.5 times 325, which will give us 2,762.5. So not 27, but 2,762.5. So those are the corrections that you should make. Then from there, we can just get the total cost. For batch 1, we are adding the prime cost plus the production overhead. That is for all the cost drivers. So we'll have 10,850 plus 4420 plus 2466 plus 2538 plus 2241 plus 1730 plus 2841, and this will give us 27,086. 27,086. We do the same for batch B, which is 2270 plus 2,167.5 plus 959 plus 1,333 plus 996 plus 1,009 plus 1,661, and this will give us 10,395.5. Then we have batch C. The prime cost is 8980 plus 5,185 plus 2,809 plus 1650 plus 1619 plus 2307 plus 2272, and this will give us 24,822. Then the last one is batch D, which is 3,300 plus 2,762.5 plus 548 plus 8250 plus 996 plus 1154 plus 1530, and this gives us 18,540.5. So this is our total cost. So once we have calculated the total cost, we now calculate the unit cost. Unit cost. In this case, the unit cost will be equal to, this will be our working number 2, unit cost, beginning with batch A. So unit cost for batch A will be equal to total cost, total cost for batch A. We divide this by the number of units for batch A. So under introduction to the question number 2, that's part B of it, we were told that the following details have been recorded for 4 batches made in the month of June 2021. So the batch given were A, B, C, and D, and then the output in units for batch A was 250 units. So to calculate the unit cost for batch A, we are getting the total cost for batch A, which is 27,086. This is in shillings. And then we are dividing this by the number of units, which are 250 units. When you calculate this, you will get 108.3 shillings. So we now bring that unit cost under batch A, and that is 108.3. We do the same for batch B. So for batch B, the number of units given in the question was 60. We take 10,395.5 divide by 60 units that are given, and this will give us 173.3. For batch C, we take 24,822 divided by the number of units were 200, and this will give us 124.1. And the last one, D, will be 18,540.5 divided by 120 units, and this will give us 154.5. And this is the unit cost for each batch. And this leads us to the end of question number 2.